now I'm going to introduce author Brian Selznick.
Honored to be here tonight, and thank you all for coming and joining. The movie came out in 2011, and it's just really very moving to me that it continues to have the life that it has. Martin Scorsese made something really extraordinary, and I'm very, very excited for you to see what he did, and I'm very proud to have made the thing that inspired him. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Sorry, sorry. I'm very proud of having made this this story that inspired Martin Scorsese and his extraordinary team, and I also would like to acknowledge Ellen's presence who, as part of this incredible team to make the movie you're about to watch. So I just thought I would take a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about the making of the book, because I know a lot of people don't know that it was a book in the first place. If you've seen the book, you may not have seen it in a long time. It's about well, you'll see what it's about, but it was inspired by Georges Méliès, a French filmmaker who made A Trip to the Moon in 1902, which is considered the first science fiction film ever made. It was also inspired by the real history of automatons, these wind-up mechanical figures. When I was researching the book, I found there was a broken automaton at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, and it wasn't on display anymore, but I convinced them to let me come and see it. And they explained to me how it works. I used that research when I was making the book. And then a friend of mine said he knew somebody who can fix automatons, who was a child like Hugo, who has a gift for fixing machines. I was introduced to Andy Barron, this mechanical genius. He gave me some information about what he was like as a kid. Some of that went into the book as well, in the character of Hugo. And he came to the Franklin Institute and fixed the automaton so that it was able to write 2 poems in 3 different languages and 6 different drawings. So here it is as he's putting it back together. There's Andy.
Do it just about right.
It's an amazing
I see a little flutter to the eyelid. There is
It might just be shadow. No, there is a tiny bit of
no, I mean, it's alive, then.
So this was made in the 1600s or 1700s. It appeared on the doorstep of the Franklin Institute in the 1900s. They didn't know who made it. And I found all this out after I had made up most of my plot, by the way. And in 1900, there was another mechanical genius who put this machine back together. And when it finished drawing all the things it could draw and writing the poems that it could write, the last poem, it signed the name of the person who made it, Mallardet. And that's how they found out who made it. So the book is illustrated. It's about a 550-page illustrated novel. You can see it outside if you haven't seen it. And Mr. Scorsese used the drawings for my book very much like a storyboard, which was a very thrilling thing to discover the first time I saw an early cut of the film. And so I just wanted to show you some of the drawings from the book that Mr. Scorsese directly translated onto the screen so that you can look out for them or take note of them as they come up in the movie. So this is from the opening of the book. The book goes back and forth with words and images, and my hope was that at the end of the book you wouldn't remember what of the narrative was drawn and what of the narrative was written. I made up this metal grate that Hugo disappears behind. I drew shots like this of Georges Méliès looking at a clock across from his toy booth. And then my book is a book. So the technology that it uses, because it is a technology, is the page turn. So in order to go from one moment to the next, you have to turn the page. A movie has the ability to move right through time. There's editing, but you can move directly through time. So in order to get the image of Hugo looking up at, there is a moment, if you haven't seen the movie, where a train is coming at you. And this is how it unfolds in the book. And I just want you to keep that in mind as you're watching the film and think about the choices that Mr. Scorsese made as he was making the movie that was originally called The Invention of Hugo Cabret. This was from the film set. After the film, we'll be back to talk about the making of the movie. I hope you enjoy it.
Brian's going to begin the Q&A where we left off before the movie. He's got a couple more things he wants to show you, and then we'll get into some questions. Yep.
So I'm just going to very briefly take us behind the scenes for what you saw, a little bit like the moment within the movie where Martin Scorsese was able to reimagine George Méliès at the beginning of his career, creating his films. And when I first met Mr. Scorsese in his office on this studio, he talked about how excited he was to be imagining that moment with a new technology. This was originally filmed to be shown in 3D. And so all of what you just saw was conceived with depth in mind, and Mr. Scorsese had the excitement in him. I think that's why his movies remain so alive and so exciting, is because he still feels the excitement that he felt throughout his entire life about the joy of making movies. And so this is, there we go. So just a brief moment of filming this one scene where the two, you can see on the little monitor what the camera is picking up. And then the 500 extras, which were on set every day during the train station. Most of it was built. You can see there was some green screen to make it even bigger. And then there were 12 or 13 different automatons that were created. So over the course of the film, the automaton's expression changes from when he's first found by the father with a bit of a frown to that last moment that you saw where he has a little bit of a Mona Lisa smile. Each of those were different, and they're very heavy, and one of them actually worked. But which Mr. Scorsese has, and one of them was made out of very light material, so Asa Butterfield could carry it. And this is how they filmed that moment where the train goes through the train station window in The Dream. That actually happened in real life. That was an accident that happened where a train jumped the tracks in the 1800s. And this was not done with computer effects. I was told they were filming this in miniature. This is the miniature.
When we get it clear.
That's 20 feet tall, the facade. That lamp post is about this tall.
Equipment collection.
Action!
That's the assistant director's kid. Hold on, someone still has to say cut.
You have to say your next line.
Cut!
It took about 9 months to build that, and they gathered us to watch. That's my husband having a very good time. And then they reshot it the next day. They pulled the train back, rebuilt the wall, and there's Mr. Scorsese directing from my book. So now I would love to talk with Ira about the making of the film. Thank you.
So, I read an interview with you where you said, and I hope I got this right, that you wrote a book about books that was really about movies. And then Marty made a movie about movies that was really about books. Can you explain that? Did I get it right?
It's the exact opposite.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
But so close.
Okay.
So I'm a bookmaker. I love making books, and I love movies. I'm distantly related to David O. Selznick, who made Gone with the Wind and King Kong, so I've always had that in my mind. But ultimately, what I really care most about is books, and I was talking earlier a little bit about that technology. So when I was making this and thinking about what happens when you turn the pages, I realized, I wasn't even sure I did this consciously, but I realized at a certain point that I had made a book that does celebrate film, but is ultimately about the importance of books themselves.
Okay.
And so when people used to ask me when I was making the book if I thought it could be adapted for film, I said no, because the physical book that I was making actually becomes part of the plot within the book. So that physical book is part of the story. And there's no way that that can be recreated in a cinematic experience. You don't end up holding anything. So when I got the call that Mr. Scorsese was going to make this movie, I thought I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I realized very quickly that Mr. Scorsese is all the characters in this book. He's Hugo. If you know the beginning of Goodfellas, when Henry Hill as a kid is looking out the window at the mobsters down below, dreaming about being mobsters, that's Hugo at the beginning of the film. I should say I had not seen a lot of Martin Scorsese films before I watched this, because I generally don't like violent films. But he's a film scholar. He is someone who has resurrected a lost filmmaker. He rediscovered Michael Powell, who made The Red Shoes, who had fallen into obscurity. Every character, he's Tabard, he's every character in the story. I got to be backstage with him before a premiere once, and I said, Mr. Scorsese, I think I may have made this movie for you. And I realized that what he had done was what you were just getting at, that he had taken my story, and with changing almost none of the plot, like this is very, very faithful to my book, he reversed that intention. And so he celebrates books. John Logan had the beautiful idea to make Isabel be the writer of the story, so we discover what her purpose is at the end. It's writing, but ultimately it's about the importance of film.
So the story of Méliès, talk about the research a little bit. I mean, how historically accurate is it?
It's very historically accurate. So everything that happens or that is talked about in the story as happening to Méliès really did happen. He did lose his films. He did have the train station. I actually went with my husband to Paris. We tracked down the house that he lived in when he was in Montparnasse. So the drawing of the door in my book is his actual door, which they recreated in the movie. That's his actual home. The interior, everything's larger, right? Everything is, when I met Dante Ferretti, the production designer who won an Oscar for this, I went to his office and he had the drawings from the book blown up all over the office. So my drawings, I draw 4 by 6 inches. All my drawings in real life are this big, and then they're blown up to be the size that they are in the book. And then Dante has an operatic imagination. And so for me, getting the chance to see that those little drawings that I had done, which do imagine big things, right? They imagine a train station, they imagine a city, but seeing it through Dante Ferretti's vast imagination was a great thrill. But all of those elements are based on real things.
And were you able to spend time, on the set? Were you involved at all with the adaptation?
Very, very little. So I did get to read an early script, and I had a sense very early on that they were being very faithful to my story, which I was grateful for. I did get the chance to offer a couple of thoughts, a couple of notes to the producer, who said they would bring them to John Logan. And when I met John and we became friends right away, he told me that a couple of them were very helpful, which I really appreciated. But generally, I was not involved. I actually couldn't get a set visit. I couldn't get a single day. And my agent kept calling and saying, sorry, they're not letting you on the set. And I was like, I wrote the book. So I made up an entire project about making a book about the making of the movie of my book, and that I had to be on the set in order to write about the scene that I was going to write about. This turned into a real book. It's called the Hugo Movie Companion, and it got me the single day. And the first person I met on the set was the woman whose job it was to tell my agent that I couldn't visit the set. And she said, what is wrong with your agent? It's my job to tell everyone that they can't come. And it's your agent's job to say, well, Brian's coming on Thursday. But he kept saying, okay, I'll call back next week, and hanging up. So I fired him and became friends with her. And I had a sense that once I was on the set, I would be able to stay for more than one day. So I blocked 2 weeks, and I was there every day. Eventually became friends with many, many people on the set. Ended up in the movie. I don't know if you noticed, I'm actually in the last scene following Tabard and Melies down the hallway. And if you listened very closely, I have a line, when can I sign up? Because I'm apparently, my character's name was Eager Student. And I was, and I was going to take the class. So I got to be on it for, on the set for, all the sets for 2 weeks. And then I got to work with Mrs. Scorsese on the making of the movie, because she usually makes the books about the making of his movies. So I got to go to their house, to their living room, to talk about what my vision for this was, and she was going to help me do it. I interviewed 40 people. Ellen, I interviewed you for this book. So I interviewed 40 people from the dog trainer to Scorsese about what they did on this movie, what they were like as kids, how they got into this line of work. And then the last chapter is about how all those people collaborated to make that last scene that you saw. And then my husband wrote an essay about the history of automatons and the history of Paris. Mr. Scorsese wrote an essay for us about the history of silent films. And when I was in their in her home, she showed me everything very generously. It was a very exciting thing, and the book's really good. I do hope you find it.
So before we run out of time, I want to make sure we have time for questions. So anybody want to raise your hand? And yep. Oop, we have a microphone running to you.
Oh, good. I don't have to yell. Thank you.
Hello, friend.
Hello, Mr. Selznick. I just wanted to say before my question, I had not noticed that you had a cameo in the movie. Like, that was a surprise to me. I thought, wow. Like, I've watched this for so many times, and I was like, I never even noticed that. It's crazy.
There I was.
Now you have to watch it again.
So my question is, seeing that this was directed by, I'm blanking on his name, Martin Scorsese, how did it feel to have like such an accomplished film director to, not only be the one to direct it, but personally choose your book to adapt? Like, if I'm not mistaken, this is like his first like kids movie or something like that. It must have been like an absolute honor.
Yeah.
It's so funny. We were chatting before this started, and the first thing that I was joking with him about in terms of a question was, how did it feel when you got that phone call? It's like anybody who writes a book about anything, they're probably fantasizing, Marty's gonna call me. Yeah.
that was not part of my fantasy life.
Yeah.
So it came very much out of the blue. So I'd been making books for 15 years by the time I made this book, and I have never had any connection with Hollywood in any way other than some friends of mine had movies made from their books, and I got to hear like glamorous stories and fun stories about them. Even when it didn't go well, they were glamorous stories to hear. And so it was not on my radar. And actually the very first contact I got was an email from a woman named Gray Rembert in the literary office of Graham King, the producer. And she said she had read an early copy of the book. And I was getting emails because I think because it's about movies, a lot of people in Hollywood were writing and calling me, which was very exciting. But she said, "Dear Brian, I just read your book. I grew up in a house with an automaton, and it scared me. And your book helped me see it in a new way, and I want to take care of your orphan. I want to take care of Hugo." And she was the one person of everyone who wrote like that. So she was the one I wanted to talk to. And it was when I spoke to her on the phone that she first mentioned Mr. Scorsese was a possibility of a director that she and her office wanted to bring the story to. Mostly I called my mom. So my mom's here tonight. And so it was basically just, it was just like, Mom, you're not going to believe this one. Right? So I don't think there was ever really a moment in the beginning where I really thought anything was going to happen, because mostly things are things to dream on, right? And things don't very often do not actually happen. So I was very appreciative of the fact that I had all these fun reasons to call my mom and be like, "You're not going to believe whose name came up today," right? So that was very exciting. And then there was Mr. Scorsese was on it, he was off it, there was a writer's strike, other director came out. And so the fact that Mr. Scorsese was able to come back and actually make this film still to this day feels a little bit like a miracle.
Happy endings only happen in the movies. Yeah. Other questions?
Oh, Simi?
Yeah.
Yep.
Coming around. First of all, thank you. This was just so beautiful and so powerful. And I was interested in watching it about the role disability plays in the film. And it seems to me, I haven't fully thought this through, but I'm sure you've thought about it. It seems to me that it has so much to do with the war and with loss. And there's so much loss in this film. And at the beginning, watching it again, I was very squirmy about the way that the bad guy was made badder and more scary by his prosthetic. And there was also so much about fixing things. And he was eventually fixed, quote unquote, by love, by community, and by technology. So that's a piece that isn't as clearly articulate, or a couple of pieces that seem to me to come together in a very beautiful way.
Oh, thank you. This is Simi Linton, who's a very important scholar, disability scholar, who's a big mentor to my husband and a performer and a really extraordinary person. And I think that a lot of what you are picking up on were things that I was unconsciously putting in because of a lot of the work that my husband was doing, who's written a lot about disability and queerness and the body and prosthetics.
Fabulous.
Right? So there's a lot of crossover between my work and David's work that I think doesn't always, again, happen in a way that I'm fully aware of, right? But it fills our house, it fills our life, it fills everything, meaning the people who we know. And so I think that it came from the narrative, like, right? I'm writing a story, George Méliès, he's in the war, you know, like and I should say that the element of the leg with the station inspector is not in my book. That is something that John Logan added for this story. The entire story of the station inspector in my book is he's a bad guy with half an ear who is chasing the kid. That he has no backstory, he has no personality other than to be there to threaten Hugo. And so that was work that John Logan, who's a very sensitive, very smart screenwriter, put in to tie this all together in a really, really compelling and very powerful way. So the ideas around the machines and the what's broken and what's fixed and what that means are there. All of those themes are there in my book. But again, I think that's a part of what Scorsese and all of these extraordinary artists who he worked with to make this happen brought out of what I had done. And I think that's one of the exciting things about seeing something you've made adapted by people who are really sensitive and brilliant, is you see things in your own work that you hadn't seen yourself previously or seen it so clearly. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Would you mind passing?
Brian, I have a more generic question. First of all, it was brilliant. I want to know, who were the key influencers in your life that encouraged your fertile imagination so that we can benefit from knowing how you were able to accomplish this extraordinary film and book?
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it would start with my parents. My mom and dad were very, very encouraging of all their kids to do whatever they wanted to do. And we're all doing what we wanted to do when we were 5, right? I wanted to be an artist. My sister wanted to be a kindergarten teacher while she was in kindergarten. And my brother wanted to be a brain surgeon. And we're all doing those things. So it started with them, and then I had a really wonderful art teacher after school named Eileen Sutton, who I worked with from the time I was 10 till the time I was 18. And so she was a very important part of my life. And then Steve Geck and Diana Blau were two people who I met when I was working at Ewer's Books for Children after college when I decided to get into children's books. And they really took me under their wing, and Steve was my boss at this incredible bookstore here on the Upper West Side on Broadway and 79. Some of you may remember it. And they are sort of how I know about the history of children's books and helped me get my first book published, The Houdini Box, in 1991. And then artistically, Maurice Sendak was probably the biggest influence. I became friends with him towards the end of his life, and he's actually the person who inspired Hugo. I met him before I made this, and he looked at all my work and said that he didn't like any of it. And he said, you can draw, which isn't true of most illustrators, but none of these books show the potential that I see in you. And he said, make the book you want to make. And out of that conversation came Hugo, and when I gave it to him, he said, this is the book I was waiting for. So he was very important to me. And Remy Charlip, who is another author and illustrator, whose books I had when I was a kid. Mom, do you have any idea why I had all of Remy Charlip's books?
I don't.
No, I had 10 of his books. Some of you may know a book called Fortunately. That was his most famous book, but they're really experimental, very interesting. Found out later he's a queer author and illustrator, and he was also a performer. And I met him right when I was beginning to work on the book, and I was able to thank him for all of the joy that he gave me throughout my life. And then I realized he looked exactly like George Méliès. So he posed as George Méliès in the book. So all the drawings in the book of Méliès are actually my favorite childhood writer and illustrator, and my big influence, Remy Charlip.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, I'm a really big fan. I picked this up at Scholastic Book Fair when I was 7.
Awesome.
And I sort of carried it around.
Scholastic.
Yeah, it was the best. And I think it was the first book I ever read that was a picture book in expansion. And I was always wondering how you sort of saw the story as a movie in your head, or was it storyboards, or was it, how the images sort of flow? Because sometimes you'll see sequences, but sometimes you'll see a page of a train coming closer. So how did you sort of figure out where to push and pull time and sort of think about it as a story that is a movie in your head, or pictures on a book?
That's a great question, and it's funny because the book began as a 98-page novella, and there was supposed to be one drawing per chapter. And I wrote almost the whole story in that format, but I couldn't quite figure out what the one drawing per chapter would be. It never quite felt right. And then I began to think about where the wild things are, where there's a wild rumpus, many of you may be able to picture right in your head, where suddenly there's no more white space, there's no more words, the pictures take over the whole book and move us forward. And then I made a connection in my mind between that and what a camera is doing in a movie, where if you think of Alfred Hitchcock or Martin Scorsese, the camera is very often telling you what to look at, what's important. It could subvert, it could make you, it could fool you into believing the wrong thing on purpose, but the camera tells the story. And then there's editing, which is very much like the turning of a page. So I began to make all of those connections, and I was watching a lot more early French films, and I began to wonder if there was a way to tell part of the story that would feel like a silent film. And so I was saying earlier, it's very important to me to make books, and I'm interested in what happens when the words and the pictures work together. So I thought, okay, if a 6-page Wild Rumpus is that exciting in a 32-page book, what if there's an 80-page Wild Rumpus every 4 pages in a 600-page book? So I took out text that I thought I could draw. So I took out all the description. I took out most of or a lot of the action. I took out emotion. I didn't have to describe emotion if I could show someone feeling sad. But for instance, if I wrote the line, Hugo ran down the hallway, I could take that out, and I could draw one picture of Hugo running down the hallway like this. But that's one drawing, and already it was one line, Hugo ran down the hallway, 5 words. Now it's going to take 2 full pages of real estate in the book, because I knew I wanted to do it like a Wild Rumpus. But that's not enough to get across the idea of the verb, to run. So I thought I could do one drawing where you see him far in the distance at the end of the tunnel, then you turn the pages closer, you turn the pages closer, you turn the page, maybe you just see his eye. Suddenly you have 10 pages of what used to be 5 words. I had 3 pages of description of the train station at the beginning of the book, And I took those out and replaced it with I don't know, I think it's like a 60-page sequence that opens the book. And so I had to call my editor, Tracy Mack at Scholastic, and say, so I have this new idea, and the book's going to be a little different than what it was. So it was ultimately meant to make you feel like you were watching a silent film. And the pictures generally don't ever repeat what's happening in the text. So the narrative is moved forward unless we're just doing a close-up on someone, like, or something that is important. So that's not time moving forward, but that's other work that the images are doing. And so generally, as you were saying, the narrative in words goes to a certain point, then the narrative is picked up in pictures for a certain amount. And then when you get out of the pictures, the words have continued from where that picture ended. So, like I said earlier, that idea that you wouldn't actually remember what you saw and what you read when you finished the book ultimately became a goal. And I think what's so beautiful for me about seeing this film and seeing it through Martin Scorsese's eyes and Dante Ferretti's eyes and the costume designer Sandy Powell's eyes and Ellen Lewis's eyes and I felt like everyone, you saw Scorsese holding my book. He gave everybody who worked on the book, a movie, a copy of my book. So seeing all of that translated through that extraordinary team and paid and done with great respect and love for the original story and then offered up as something new, I think is part of what makes it so satisfying. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Brian, for being here.
Thank you.
The book is available for sale outside, and we're signing people up for the Upper West Side Cinema Center mailing list out there. And
Ira, I have to ask one last question to you, and this is more of a setup, but Martin Scorsese's on the advisory board of Upper West Side Cinema.
Yep.
What's motivating him to, he needs another project? He's getting bored?
Yeah, he's pretty busy. He was the very first person of any note to endorse the project. Thank you for asking the question, by the way. He literally, I reached out to everybody I knew in the business. He was one of them. And I frankly was kind of shocked when I got the answer, yes, put me on your advisory board. I want this to happen. And he's an enormous supporter. That's all I can say. Yeah.
For the love of cinema. Thank you all. We'll see you soon.